July 4th, 2005. Item number 58. Today's special guests are Dawn and Drew.
Podcast411.com. Listen different.
Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Rob, and this is the Podcast 411 podcast. If you've been paying attention for the last week, we've had 3 couples in a row. Harry and Ziva from The View from Here, Len and Nora from Jawbone Radio, and Jason and Anna from Delta Park Project. What better way to cap that off on Independence Day with the most independent couple there is out there in podcasting, and that's Dawn and Drew. So today we're very pleased to have as our guests Dawn and Drew from the Dawn and Drew Show. But before we get into the interview, a couple quick news and notes. First, with regards to the website, if you haven't been there, please visit at www.podcast411.com. And I should point out, the website is completely ad-free, sponsorship-free, commercial-free, Amazon link-free, Google AdSense-free, free of all the BS you see at a lot of other sites. So please check it out. A lot of good free tutorials on podcasting, how to podcast, ID3 tutorials, how to hand code RSS feeds, and even explanations of what podcasting is. Additionally, on the site, we have a podcasting jobs page, which you can find on the podcasting jobs button or go to directly at www.podcastingjobs.com. We have a few different podcasting jobs listed out there. We're well over 20 different jobs in the area of podcasting or media, and I've added quite a few in the last few weeks. So check out, again, podcastingjobs.com. And one last note on the site, I would like to thank everybody that's voted for us over at Podcast Alley and Podcast Pickle. If you haven't voted this month, please go over to Podcast Alley and Podcast Pickle and vote for us, and vote for our guests also. Now, an iTunes tech tip for everyone. As I learn more about iTunes, I'll be sharing what I learned. But first one is, if you have a promo, what you want to do is you want to place an item in your RSS feed and make sure it's the last item in the feed, and make sure you predate that publication date on it so it shows up as the oldest item also. Why? In iTunes, when you do a search, as a perfect example, go into iTunes and do a search for Podcast 411 from the podcast page in iTunes. You'll see a found screen, and right now it'll just show you found Podcast 411. Underneath where it says name, you'll see Podcast 411. And if you click on that, what it'll do is it'll start playing the MP3 referenced in the last item of your feed. So if your last item is a promo, when someone, say, does a search for, if they had done a search for podcast, they would get multiple items. And if they're clicking on the different items to listen to a snippet of it, what you're going to hear is your promo being played. So a little trick for iTunes is add in your promo as the last item in your feed. As I mentioned on the last podcast, we and my wife are starting to try to have a kid. Little background, we've been married 8 years and 8 months, and my wife has wanted to try to have a child for 8 years, 7 months, and 30 days. So when we finally decided to start trying this past week, while we're trying, my wife is so happy that she's actually giggling and laughing while we're trying. It's very hard, take that back, very difficult to maintain one's manhood when your wife is laughing during the deed. So we have to get past the giggling phase, or we'll be talking about trying in the November Expo still. Well, that's enough on the personal side. We're going to go ahead and get into our interview with Dawn and Drew. I do want to point out, this is a longer interview than normal. This interview is going to go 25 minutes compared to the normal 15 minutes. There was just some stuff I just couldn't cut out. So just a little bit longer, your Independence Day special. So let's get started. Here we go. Well, Dawn and Drew, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you very much
for having us.
I'm going to start you out with a traditional first question, and that is, what was your first computer?
Cool. I knew that was coming. And, my very, very first computer that I ever used was my father's, and it was an old Bally game station that you were able to, program via, RGB colors and then a number to create a code, and you could, draw little pictures and stuff. It was very, very non-effective to get really any kind of work done, but it was interesting. But then he went and bought me a TI 99 4A, and that's when I really started going crazy, because you could record to a cassette tape, and you could draw by the pixel and stuff.
I don't even know what that is, Drew. Well, Drew, what's the kind of computer that's upstairs? The Mac
those
one?
Those are Mac Classics.
That's what was my first computer. My mom had one.
Oh yeah, I've got 2 old Mac Classics that I'm going to use as bookends now.
What was the first podcast you guys listened to?
First one I ever listened to was Rasterweb Audio. He's an old friend of mine, Pete, and he actually got me into blogging back in 2000. So then, one day I'm reading his website, and he's writing stuff about Adam Curry and Dave Weiner and Dave Slusher, and he's following what they're doing, and he's checking it all out. And he wrote a little Perl script called Renko, which basically was an iPodder. And, he was doing the same thing that they were all doing. And he, one day was like, hey, Drew, you got to get into this audio thing. You got to just record something and put it out there and, do the RSS feed. And, he just was like pushing me into this whole format, just like he pushed me into blogging. So, I heard his little thing, and I checked out Adam Curry's, I checked out Dave Weiner's, and I recorded a little, 5-minute thing one day, and, I just talked into a little, built-in microphone on the PowerBook, and I didn't really have anything to say, and I played a little thing of Don playing her flute, and, and I let it, and I put it out there, and, he heard it, and I think he, sent Adam an email to listen to it, and, John heard it, and it was really, really bad. I don't know how to talk to myself very well, and so Dawn caught wind, and she listened, and she just kind of understood the potential of what this could all do. And so the very next night was our 10-year anniversary, and we recorded one together.
And the rest is history.
The rest is podcasting history.
How about you, Dawn? What was your first podcast?
Okay, well, yeah, I guess it would, besides Drew's and Pete's, it was Adam's. And I was always joking. I'm like, Adam Curry has a crush on me. I was always joking on the show. And then one time, he said something about us or something that I was his girlfriend, and we just laughed and giggled and laughed.
We had a little back and forth with Adam for quite a bit before we met him in BloggerCon.
Well, we had fun. We went to a 3D porn with Adam that night.
Now, I can't say I've ever seen 3D porn.
Well, neither had we before that night, but that's when we knew that Adam Curry was very, very cool. Because Don was like, hey, you down? You want to go see some 3D porn? And he was like, he basically put his coat on and said, let's go. And it was like 2 in the morning, He was in his, we were hanging out in his hotel room and stuff, and, he was game. And so we went and saw, what was it, Don? It was John Holmes, Lollipop Girls.
Lollipop Girls, yeah.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
John Holmes in 3D. It's like that'd be like watching Star Wars in 3D with that thing whipping out there.
Well, I think the big effect was the money shot was at the lens, so it was looked like it was going to shoot right on there.
It's as good as it seemed. We just wish that we had squirt guns.
Oh.
So we could have squirted the people behind us.
Mix Rocky Horror Picture Show with 3D porn.
Yeah. They have that in some rides at Disneyland, right? Where you're sitting in a chair and then they blow wind at your feet, or they mist a little water.
But it's not porn at Disney.
No, but that just would have been so great if they would have incorporated that.
Well, we used to always call porns Disney Nasties because they always had somebody by the name of Bambi and Thumper.
That's funny.
Today, what podcasts are you guys listening to?
Oh man, I've usually got a list on our website of my most recent favorites. They come and go. I don't. There's so many out there, so it's difficult to always listen to the same ones. But some of my favorites these days are. I'm still listening to Pete whenever he puts out a new file, which isn't so often. But he's got a new thing called Tinkernet where he's doing little video blogs. But I also I listen to the Invincibles. They've got a food podcast that they do video as well as MP3. Always listening to Dave and Adam when they put their stuff out. I listen to Rock and Roll Geek Show, Evil Genius Chronicles, Real Reviews. That one is Michael Gohig, and then that guy is just such a pro. His stuff always sounds so good. But Be My Guest, I listen to Puffcast, which is very cool because on one show I was talking about Caribbean Free Radio, and they do some Caribbean type stuff, some reggae, but not really. And I was like, man, I just wish somebody would do a reggae podcast. And sure enough, this guy starts doing Puffcast, which is all reggae, and it's just great, I mean, if you're into reggae, that show is just awesome.
You also like that one with the novel, Drew?
Yeah, the Earth Core. That one is very cool.
Yeah, I just had Scott on 2 weeks ago.
Yep, I just listened to that one. That was a very good interview too, and I love that book. It's a very good story. I'm really digging it. I'm all anxious now because I've caught up.
Oh.
Now I'm anxious for the next one. I also listen to Soccer Girl, PK and J. Those are good ones too. Those are a couple shows. They have a min pin.
I love anyone who has anyone who has small dogs. I love small dog mentality.
I've had all three of them on previously, and they're all great girls. And I actually had PK and J on. Oh my God, back in early February.
Yeah, and he's real talented. They write some songs together and stuff.
Yeah.
I keep in touch with them all. Pretty much. I'm probably more in touch with Soccer Girl than PK and J. But we email each other back and forth.
I'm not in touch with anyone.
Yeah.
I have a strange theory about why your show remains number one of all the couple shows. And you ready for this? It's because the girl's name is first. Everything else is the guy's name first. Keith and the girl, PK and Jay, Nate and Di, Jason and Anna. Just every couple it's always guy first, then girl. But you're the one that is actually girl first, then guy.
See, I know better.
That was an accident.
Yeah. What's funny is that we had DawnandDrew.com years before we ever started doing a podcast, and I would put together a photo gallery, and I was always calling things the Dawn and Drew Show. I would always call things the Dawn and Drew Show. And then when we started doing the podcast, it just kind of was like, oh, duh, here's why I was always calling things the Dawn and Drew Show, because this is what it was for. It was just it all had kind of just led up to itself.
I told a couple people I was doing the interview, and I got a couple of questions that people wanted me to ask. One is from C.C. Chapman.
Okay.
And he wanted to know, what gets aired? Are there things that you just say, well, we can't do that. That just crossed the line?
Hell no.
No, that's not true, Drew. Sometimes I'm like, we can't say that.
That's very, very, very rare.
It's very rare. It is very rare. But sometimes I'll say something where I'm like, even I can't say that. I know that that's going to be, if it's just Drew and I talking and it's not for everyone else, and he knows me and he knows I'm not being really mean, I'm just trying to be silly or something. That's one thing. But since it's going out to the world and no one really knows us that well, so.
Yeah, but out of 114 shows that we've done that, maybe twice, 3 times, maybe?
Yeah, probably not too bad. It's not a high enough ratio, probably.
You know what's really crazy, though, is that the stuff that we think, that we're on the verge of maybe not putting it out, we expect people to slam us on it, to give us all kinds of flack, all kinds of hate mail or whatever, and we never get any, and nobody says anything. But then all of a sudden, something that we both think is so tame and not a big deal, people will give us all kinds of flack over it. It's really weird.
I have a bunch of questions that I normally ask, and for you guys, I crossed a bunch out. But one I put an asterisk next to, and that is, what is the most memorable email or feedback you received?
Probably the most memorable one happened really not that long ago, where I got an email, and this guy was like, hey, I just saw you at the Tristan Place, which is this restaurant over here. And I was like, what? I read the thing, and I didn't really understand what he was saying, and then I called Dawn, and sure enough, she was out with her girlfriend having lunch with her with her new baby and stuff, and I was like, are you at the Tristan Place, Dawn? And she's like, yeah. I was like, well, there's somebody there that just saw you. The guy made a point not to go up to her, but if he would have, it would have been the very first official off the street sighting.
Yeah, that was really weird because it's easy to not think that podcasting is affecting our little day-to-day existence here because nobody ever stops us on the street. We're pretty anonymous. But yeah, that was weird because I was it was a private eye was on my ass.
Yeah. How about the guy that you went to camp with, Don? Maybe that's yours. I don't know. Unless you're still thinking.
Oh, I have a bunch of people that have wrote me, and they were like, I knew you when we were 13 or something. And that's been really cool.
It's like you won the lottery.
I know.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, this little this guy Bob, who was my I went to camp, a DNR camp, and he went to camp too, and he was my little boyfriend or something. So not really, but little kid boyfriends and stuff. And so he wrote, and I was like, oh my God. So we started calling him ex-boyfriend Bob in the show. I keep wanting to have him on the show. I have to make sure that happens. Thanks for reminding me.
I have a question. I guess I'll play it from Corby. So Corby from Twisted Pickle sent me an audio question in for to play for you guys.
Thank you, Rob, for the opportunity to ask a question of Don and Drew. I'm Corby from the Twisted Pickle Show. Longtime listener, been around since pretty much day one and have heard all your shows. Anyway, the question I have for you relates to an older subject that I haven't heard you talk about in a while, your world domination wall. In the early days of your podcast, Dawn talked quite a bit about a wall that you had in your home where you were sticking all of the photos that were sent to you from your listeners, and it was kind of your little collection of people that you've already dominated, which would inevitably lead to world domination. I'm curious if your success in the podosphere has detracted you a little bit from taking over the entire world, and if you're content with just ruling the podcasting universe, or if you still have plans to take over the rest of the world. As far as I know, at last rumor, Drew was already a crowned prince in Tajikistan, and there's a certain sect of witches that live in the Malaysian mountains who are worshipping Dawn as a fertility goddess. So, what's the deal? How far are we away from total Dawn and Drew domination? Do I have time to invest in Toblerones, duck penises, mouth harps, and USB-powered vibrators?
That sounds good.
Well, see, this is the big secret, okay? And we'll do it exclusive on your show here. The plan for world domination is totally still in effect, but it's more underground. Basically, we fill every single podcast that we do with these, what do we call it, Drew? It's like the underlying...
The subliminal messages?
Subliminal messages, that's right. We fill every podcast...
I didn't know you were going to break the silence.
Well, you know, I feel like we've been doing it enough that now we've hooked enough people where we can start the minion army. So the subliminal messages have really been effective in bringing more and more people into our army, into the Dawn and
regarding the map on the wall with all the pins, I just went out and bought one big pin.
It's gigantic.
Cover the whole back. One big push.
Yeah.
It's outside your house. It's a spike sticking through the wall.
That's right. We just put a skewer through a globe.
You know, we're basically, you know, we just want to get everyone hooked, and then we'll disappear for a while. And then when we come back, everyone will be so excited that then really the world domination will be totally in effect. And I've been distracted by a bunch of shiny things.
Yeah.
Rhinestones and crystals and such, but
we haven't really talked about it that much, just because, like, when we did our show 69, you know, we put out a survey in order for people to get that show. And a part of that survey, you know, we asked where they were from, and it was part of a little, you know, trick on our end so that we could get, you know, locations to put on our map. And so the overwhelming response we got from that survey, it just kind of, it was like a stumbling block, because I've got these pages and pages and pages of like thousands and thousands of locations to stick into this map. It was like so daunting of a task that it's just kind of been like on hold. But I mean, the map
until we get our intern.
Yeah, I mean, the map is on the wall. It's, you know, we've got, you know, pictures surrounding it, postcards. We've got so much stuff on it. We've got so many pins on the map, and just so many to go that it's just been like one of those things that we've just kind of been like putting off and putting off. But one of these days, I definitely want to finish it, and then I want to like either take a little video of it or some pictures or something, and just let everybody know that, like, you know, it really is a real thing.
Okay.
It's real. Hey, you know, it was great when the internet guy came to hook up the computer. He was like, "What is this map about?" I'm like, "It's our world domination map." We look like little crazy dictators.
It is funny. And when USA Today came over to do the interview, they came and took pictures. The guy made it a point to like take all kinds of shots of the map and stuff.
Now, how many interviews have you done?
Oh my gosh.
Oh,
Rough estimate. It's got 100?
Over 100.
I would have to think it. I mean, at least that. I mean, we've been in so many articles and so many people have written stuff about us, not that aren't necessarily just interviews. So I mean, overall press is just ridiculous. I mean, I try to keep track of it on our little press scrapbook page, and it just grows and grows and grows. But yeah, I mean, I would have to think at least 100 interviews. It's kind of nuts.
No.
We just did one like an hour ago.
Yeah. We had one at 7 o'clock, and it went till like 7:45. We didn't know it was going to take that long. We kept on hoping that it'd be over before you called.
I was thinking about this, Dawn. It's July 1st, 2004. PSG 2004 just ends on the 26th. You probably, right about July 1st, you would have gotten back, roughly, or day before.
Right.
What are you thinking is your plans for the next 6 months? Because at this time, you have no idea about podcasting. I mean, what were you projecting, both of you, thinking a year ago you would be doing for the next 6 to 12 months?
we have a barn here that I'm turning into an art studio and like a performance gallery space upstairs. So I was really planning on concentrating the next year to finishing that and getting that just situated and starting to have shows there. And of course, that has been completely put on the side burner right now. I haven't been able to do anything really in there except for painting. But yeah, I mean, a year ago, we had no idea. So it's
pretty nuts.
So your life has completely changed in 12 months. Completely.
Well, even less than that. I mean, nobody knew who we were 9 months ago. Before, I mean, even the first month of us doing the show, you didn't have that much effect on people. Come, you say just before November, like right around BloggerCon, you know, people were really starting to like find out who we were and like were listening to us. So it's really been like 8 or 9 months. So yeah, I mean, before that, who knew who we were? Nobody.
Our moms did, Drew.
Our parents and our friends. That's about it.
What do your parents think about the show?
My dad has totally embraced showbiz dad personality. He'll call and say, like, how are the numbers? You know. When I was little, I begged them. I pleaded them to make me like I wanted to be a child star. I wanted to be in movies and stuff, and I would beg them, and they would be like, oh, we don't want to do that. We're in Wisconsin. It would be too difficult to take you to auditions and stuff. So it's kind of funny now that he's becoming showbiz dad, because I was like, why didn't you let me be Annie? You know. But my mom, I don't think she's ever heard a single show. I kind of tell her what they're about. We try to keep everything away from Grandma. We don't want my grandma to hear.
Yeah, luckily she has XM instead of Sirius, so we were like,
I know. I live in fear of my grandma hearing the show. That'll probably be the day I have to stop. My grandma will force me to stop.
I was going to say, it could be worse, though. Your grandmother could listen to it, and then the next time you're together, she can go, Donnie, can you tell me what vibrator would you recommend?
That would be awesome. I would not fear that at all, because I really enjoy awkward moments. I feast on them. It would be the moment where Grandma would make me go to her Catholic church, and I would have to do confession or something. My grandpa would totally dig it, because he's been telling me, like, dirty jokes since I was a kid, so Grandpa would like it. Grandma would, she would not embrace it.
Maybe they got a subscription to Fox because of it.
Well,
they did not.
Well, I heard you got your Fox package the other day with the goodies.
Yeah, that was a real surprise, you know, because we talked about them so many times, and like, who knew that they would actually be listening? I know that my mom has heard a couple of shows, and we were just out in LA not too long ago. And we had a little gathering with listeners in the area, and so my parents came out, and I don't think that they had really grasped like the fact that like people listen to us or what's going on until they were like sitting around the gathering, and like people that hear our show were going up and talking to them and like hey, how's it going? They were kind of
your parents were so funny.
Yeah, I think they were a little freaked out though.
They said, Dawn, who is that person? And I'm like, I don't know. They listen to the show. And they're like, them? And I'm like, yeah, I don't know who that is.
Now, what have you seen, what kind of increase have you seen in traffic because of iTunes?
Well, I mean, our site was crushed. It had been down for over 72 hours because of it. And that was actually a kind of a mistake on Apple's part. They weren't supposed to be pointing to our server. They were supposed to have cached all our MP3s and our RSS and sent it to their little Akamai. I think it's Akamai. I don't know how you pronounce it.
Akamai, yes.
Yeah, so they were supposed to be redirecting all the stuff there so that we wouldn't get such a hard hit. But because they didn't actually do that when they launched, our site was literally unavailable for over 3 days. I mean, since we're part of the Pod Show network, the Pod Show guys had to go out and basically buy a few more servers. They had to like double or triple the bandwidth for the entire network, and it's just barely yesterday is kind of like seeing light of day. It's unbelievable the response that we've been getting. I mean, they're already reporting that over 1 million subscribers through iTunes in 2 days.
I know that was phenomenal. That was great to hear.
That floored me, and we're like right there on the homepage. So I mean, even if like you don't like our show or anything, I'm sure people are just clicking to subscribe to just check us out. So I mean, that kind of exposure is just unbelievable.
What do you guys think right now after the iTunes? How many subscribers do you think you have?
Oh my gosh, we don't have any numbers from iTunes yet, but I mean, even if it's 10% of the million, I mean, geez, come on.
Do you think you're at 100,000? Yeah, I was wondering if you made it to about 100,000 after the launch.
Oh yeah, we were there before the.
Yeah, I mean we were there before iTunes, but now add on another. It's like who knows, and maybe it's even more than that. Who knows? people might be subscribing just to check it out. What if all million have us in their list? Who knows?
I don't listen true. No.
I doubt that too, but I'm saying it's possible. And now it's been almost a week. That was just in the first 2 days.
Well,
but we didn't have a website for 3 days.
Equipment-wise, we haven't even talked about what are you using today? Have you gotten the new computer yet?
No.
We always claim to have the most ghetto setup in all of podcasting, and we're still using the same gear from the very first show. Well, actually, the only upgrade we've gotten since the first show was that we bought a $20 USB microphone. But we're still using I've got a 12-inch PowerBook, and I run GarageBand along with like the SoundFlower sound routing program, and that's
Which
about
is
it.
free.
Yeah, a bunch of free stuff. I had to get an external hard drive just to record onto because it was starting to like stress the computer out when I was recording onto the internal hard drive. But that's basically it. We have no fancy mixer, no fancy equipment. We've got a couple old headphones that we use. We have a headphone splitter. But we anticipate getting some new gear someday soon, and maybe that'll ruin everything. But until then, we're using the same old setup.
Well, here's
It
praying.
won't ruin it.
Well, here's praying that the new setup is Mac.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
It has to be. Although Steve Jobs ain't doing us no favors.
I heard you call out in one of the shows. I heard you call out to Steve to send you some equipment. Steve, if you're listening, if someone's listening, send them a lunch tray. Come on, send them the 17-inch.
Yeah.
I'm gonna start a Steve Jobs campaign. I've just decided where I'm gonna talk to him every single day until I just draining his brain, and he'll be like, "Fine, shut up, Dawn."
We know he knows about us, and I always thought his Wayne's World Radio was totally a reference to us because we've been called that in a few different articles because we live in Wayne. But now that I heard that ABC News Shuffle podcast interviewed Steve Jobs, and like the guy totally hit him up about like Disney, ESPN, NPR, all these big time media companies, and then he threw Dawn and Drew show in the mix of it all. So he knows about us. It's just a matter. We'll just have to see if he does anything about it.
Well, I'm going to be real interested to see how this plays out over the next 6 months. If the quote indie podcasters become more popular than the mainstream, what I called in my podcast today was broadcasting overlords. So you have the indie podcasters, the IP, and the broadcasting overlords, which are your BOs, and so it's the IPs against the BOs.
Nice.
It's the classic Big Brother scenario.
It's a little unfortunate that they got so much prominence on the iTunes podcast page. I mean, it would have been a little bit nicer, a little bit more podcaster-friendly if, say, the indies were on the upper half of the page. Because, I mean, you got all these radio stations and all these big media and stuff that, they're not part of podcasting, the growth of it all. They're just jumping on the bandwagon now.
Yeah, and a lot of them aren't even true podcasts. They're just rehash.
Exactly. So, I mean, I can understand Apple's point of view. They're all about making money and selling iPods. They want to get the big brother out there. But, at least they included us.
Yeah. It would have been nice, though. I agree with you that it would have been either the first or the second, not put it at the third below the big bar of stuff. And depending on how you have your iTunes open, you may not even see it.
We'll get there. We'll get on the top.
Last question I always love to ask, and this is especially poignant from you guys. What advice would you like to offer to people that are not just starting out, but are already podcasting?
I would like to tell everyone to, limit your hatred and your jealousy. Instead of being, concentrating on, what everyone else is getting, the press or any kind of notoriety or anything, just, make your show the best. I mean, the best it can be. We do get a lot of, flame mail and stuff. Actually, it's been more so in the past, not too recently, but I think, we're just all trying to promote podcasting. All these interviews and everything that we've done, we're not getting paid for it. We haven't really made any money from this. We're just trying to promote podcasting and the idea that, Drew and I invested $20 into a microphone, and now our voice is being heard around the world. That's a beautiful thing, and no one's censoring us, so we can just say whatever we want. Just concentrate on that, and I think really your message will come through. That's my advice.
I agree with that wholeheartedly. I mean, as long as you're passionate about the topic that you want to put out for the people to hear, it'll come through that way. People, if they have an interest in what you have to say, they're going to listen.
Okay. Well, Dawn and Drew, thank you both very much for coming on the show.
Well, thank you, Rob. We appreciate it.
Well, folks, that concludes our interview with Dawn and Drew. Please check out their podcast, the 2 or 3 of you that haven't already, at www.dawnandrew.com. Guys, thanks again for coming on the show. I've really had a good time interviewing you. You guys were a blast. Now, at the end of every show, I always play a promo from another podcast, and today's promo is going to be from a podcast that I listen to every day, and that's the Kansas City Weather Podcast by Ed Roberts. Ed did a great job in this promo. So Ed took what most people consider a boring, mundane subject and made a really funny, good promo out of it. So stick around, listen to that. I think you'll enjoy it. For those of you new to the podcast, I hope you continue to subscribe to the podcast. We have some very good interviews coming up this month with Paul from Barefoot Radio, Aaron from The Big Show, Doug Kay from IT Conversations, Trucker Tom, Mommy Cast, Dave's Lounge, and many others. So please stay subscribed. We'd love to have you back and love to get your feedback. Tell us who you'd like to have on the show. Tell us who you'd like to see as a guest on Podcast 411. You can send your feedback and promos or other information to podcast411@gmail.com. That's podcast411@gmail.com. One last item I almost forgot to mention, and that is I am the Kansas City Podcast Meetup organizer, and this Saturday, July 9th, will be our next Kansas City Podcast Meetup. It is at 4 o'clock p.m. in Overland Park at the Johnny's at 119th and Glenwood. So again, if you're in the Kansas City area, like to come out to a podcasters meetup this Saturday, July 9th, 4 p.m., Johnny's, 119th in Glenwood. Love to see you there. Also, go to the meetup.com website and sign up as a member. That's going to do it for us today. As always, this is your host, Rob, from Podcast 411, reminding you to listen different.
Weather emergencies can strike like a bolt from the blue. Storms, floods, hurricanes, tornadoes. Is your family safe? Is it? Before you venture outdoors, tune into Big News Weather Central, now with Live in Fear Doppler. Only Live in Fear Doppler warns you of storm conditions that could snap telephone poles like matchsticks, flinging them through the air at hundreds of miles an hour, plunging through your family's bodies like chopsticks through boiled potatoes.
Mom, I'm late for soccer practice. Don't open the door.
Don't open the door. Check first with Live in Fear.
Okay, that's just about enough of that. Hi, I'm meteorologist Ed Roberts from the Kansas City Weather Podcast. Well, no, we don't have our own super action power Doppler, and we don't have up-to-the-minute severe weather information. But hey, this is a podcast. What we do offer you is a detailed and dependable weather forecast every day for the Kansas City area. So if you live in and around the Kansas City area, make sure you check out the Kansas City Weather Podcast at kcweather.blogspot.com. And hey, get some everyday use out of your aggregator.